Captain Jin-Ho Kim stood frozen on the bridge of the Earth Defense Coalition ship Horizon Watch Star. His dark eyes reflected the blue glow of the holographic display that showed something no human parent should ever see. The emergency transmission from Kepler 442b had been playing for 3 minutes, but it felt like hours. The Deep Space Monitoring Station had gone dark 3 days ago. Jin-Ho had hoped it was just another equipment failure or solar storm interference. Those things happened all the time on the Outer Rim colonies. But the automated distress beacon had just finished uploading its final data packet, and what it revealed made his blood turn to ice. Crimson ships filled the display. Sleek and predatory, they moved through space like hunting sharks. The Vorthan Empire vessels were unmistakable with their curved hulls and weapon ports that glowed like angry eyes. Jin-Ho had seen these ships before in intelligence briefings, but always at a distance, always in neutral space. Now they were attacking human colonies. "Computer, enhance the central farming district," Jin-Ho ordered. His voice came out rougher than he intended. The image shifted and zoomed. What Jin-Ho saw next would haunt him for the rest of his life. The Vorthan soldiers were not destroying buildings. They were not stealing crops or mining equipment. They were not even fighting the adult colonists, who ran around in panic but were largely ignored. Instead, the aliens moved with cold, surgical precision toward one target. The children. Human kids between 5 and 15 years old were being rounded up like livestock. Tall Vorthan soldiers with scaled green skin and 4 muscular arms grabbed the youngsters and carried them toward strange metal containers. The children did not scream. They did not fight. Their small faces were blank and empty, their eyes staring at nothing. "Something is wrong with them," whispered Lieutenant Minute-Jun Lee from his post at the tactical station. He was barely 22 and had never seen combat. His hands shook as he watched the display. Dr. Hyjin Park moved closer to the main screen. She was Earth's top expert on alien psychology, a small woman with graying hair who had spent years studying how different species thought and behaved. Her face was pale as she examined the readings. "Captain," she said slowly, "I am detecting strong neural suppression fields around each child. The Vorthans are using some kind of mind control device to keep them calm and cooperative." Jin-Ho felt his stomach drop. Why would they need to suppress their minds? Dr. Park worked at her console, pulling up data files and cross-referencing them with known Vorthan technology. Her fingers moved quickly across the holographic interface, but Jin-Ho could see the fear in her movements. "Sir, based on intelligence reports about Vorthan computer systems, I believe." She paused and took a deep breath. "I believe they are harvesting human neural networks. They are turning our children into biological computers." The bridge went completely silent except for the soft hum of the ship's life support systems. Even the background chatter from other stations stopped as the crew processed what they had just heard. Jin-Ho stared at the display where Vorthan soldiers continued loading human children into containment pods. The kids looked like dolls, limp and unresponsive. Some were so young they still had baby fat on their cheeks. Others were teenagers who should have been worrying about homework and first dates. Instead, they were being stolen to have their minds enslaved. Something ancient and terrible awakened in Jin-Ho's chest. It was a feeling that had been sleeping since humanity had learned to live in peace among the stars. For generations, humans had worked to become better, to solve problems with words instead of weapons, to build instead of destroy. But watching alien monsters steal human children brought back every protective instinct that evolution had burned into the human species. Jin-Ho felt his hands clench into fists. His jaw tightened. Behind his eyes, something cold and dangerous began to grow. "How many children?" he asked quietly. Dr. Park checked her readings. "From this colony alone? At least 300. Captain, if they are doing this here, they might be doing it at other colonies too." The tactical display showed more Vorthan ships in the distance, moving toward other human settlements. Jin-Ho realized this was not just one attack. This was a systematic harvesting operation. Lieutenant Minute-Jun Lee looked up from his station with wide, frightened eyes. "Sir, what do we do?" Jin-Ho stood up slowly from his captain's chair. Around him, his crew waited for orders. They were good people, all of them. Scientists, explorers, peacekeepers. They had signed up to make contact with new species, to explore strange worlds, to build bridges between civilizations. None of them had expected to see human children being stolen and prepared for neural slavery. "Communications," Jin-Ho said. His voice was soft, but everyone on the bridge could hear the deadly promise underneath the calm words. "Send an immediate priority alpha transmission to Earth Command. Full encryption. Tell them the Vorthans have crossed a line that should never be crossed." The communications officer, Ensign So-Young Kim, nodded quickly and began preparing the message. Sir, Dr. Park asked quietly, what do you think Earth will do? Jinho looked back at the display one last time. A Vorthan soldier was carrying a human girl who could not have been older than 6. Her blonde hair hung limply as she was loaded into a containment pod with dozens of other stolen children. They have just declared war on every parent on Earth, Jinho said. What do you think Earth will do? The United Earth Council chamber had never seen anything like it. Within 6 hours of Captain Kim's transmission reaching Earth, representatives from every nation, every corporation, and every human colony in space had gathered in the massive dome-shaped building in Geneva. The emergency session was called so quickly that some delegates were still in their pajamas, having been pulled from their beds by urgent calls from their governments. President Minitsu Cho stood at the center podium, his usually calm face showing strain and exhaustion. Behind him, massive screens displayed the horrific footage from the Kepler 442b colony. The images played on repeat, Vorthan soldiers with their 4 arms and scaled green skin, human children with blank stares being loaded into metal containers, the eerie silence where there should have been screaming and chaos. Dr. Hyejin Park walked to the microphone with heavy steps. She had been awake for 18 hours straight, analyzing the data and preparing her report. Her voice was hoarse as she spoke to the 847 delegates who filled the chamber. The evidence is clear, she began, her words echoing through the silent hall. The Vorthans are using our children as living computers. Their most advanced technology requires organic neural networks to function properly. They have been hunting younger species across the galaxy for this purpose. She paused and looked directly at the camera that was broadcasting to billions of humans across Earth and the colonies. Human children are apparently the most compatible with their systems. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Delegates leaped from their seats, shouting in dozens of different languages. English, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, Hindi, Russian. The words were different but the emotion was identical. Pure, burning rage that seemed to fill the chamber like a living thing. Ambassador Maria Santos from Brazil was screaming in Portuguese, her face red with anger. The delegate from Japan, Mr. Hiroshi Tanaka, was speaking rapidly into his communication device, probably alerting his government. The representative from the African Union, Dr. Kwame Asante, stood with his fists raised, speaking in Swahili with tears streaming down his face. Even the corporate representatives, usually cold and calculating, were showing raw emotion. The CEO of Stella Mining Corporation was pounding his desk with both hands. The head of the Colonial Transport Authority was shouting orders to her assistants to prepare every available ship. President Cho raised his hands for silence, but the noise continued for several minutes. When quiet finally returned, the air itself seemed to vibrate with barely controlled fury. General Tai Young Lim walked slowly to the podium. He was 73 years old and had been fighting humanity's wars since he was 18. His weathered face looked like it had been carved from granite, and his gray eyes had seen more death and destruction than most people could imagine. He had fought on 6 different worlds, from the icy moons of Jupiter to the burning deserts of Proxima Centauri. I have been a soldier for 55 years, he said quietly. The chamber was so silent that his whisper carried to every corner. I have seen species try to exterminate us completely. I have watched aliens attempt to enslave our adults, to convert us to their religions, to steal our resources and destroy our homes. He paused and looked around the chamber, making eye contact with delegates from every continent. But this? His hands slowly clenched into fists at his sides. This requires a different kind of response. The general's voice grew stronger, carrying the weight of decades of military command. They have declared war on our children. They have chosen to harvest the minds of our young. There can be no mercy for this. There can be no compromise. President Cho stepped back to the microphone. His voice was steady but everyone could hear the steel underneath his diplomatic tone. The motion before us today is simple. We declare total war against the Vorthan Empire. Not for conquest. Not for resources. Not for territory. We will fight until we have completely destroyed their ability to harm any child, anywhere in the galaxy, ever again. The vote was called immediately. No debate was needed. No committee hearings or lengthy discussions. The electronic voting system lit up as delegates entered their decisions. The final tally appeared on the main screen, 847 votes for war, 0 against. Every single human representative on Earth had voted for total war. Within 3 hours of the vote, something unprecedented began happening across the solar system. Every shipyard from Earth to Mars to the outer colonies started retooling their production lines. Civilian transport ships were being converted into warships. Mining equipment was being modified into weapons. Construction drones were being reprogrammed for military use. Corporate executives who normally competed fiercely against each other were now sharing their most classified technology freely. The CEO of Advanced Propulsion Systems called the head of quantum weapons research and offered to share 30 years of secret engine designs. The director of the Colonial Defense Initiative opened her classified files to every military contractor in the system. Dr. Sungminit Yoon, head of the Advanced Weapons Division, stood before a room filled with the brightest scientists from around the globe. Physicists, biologists, engineers, computer specialists, they had all volunteered to drop their current projects and focus on one goal. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Yoon said, your mission is simple. Find every weakness the Vorthans have. Find every vulnerability in their ships, their weapons, their biology, their technology. Learn how to hurt them in ways they never imagined possible. A young scientist from India raised her hand. Sir, what about the ethics of? They steal children, Dr. Yoon interrupted. They turn young minds into computer parts. There are no ethics here anymore. There is only hunting. The normally fractured human species had become something else entirely. Every nation, every corporation, every colony was now part of a single organism with one purpose, making the Vorthans pay for what they had done to human children. The age of human mercy was over. The age of human vengeance had begun. 6 months had passed since the vote that changed everything. In that time, humanity had transformed itself from a peaceful, exploring species into something the galaxy had never seen before. The shipyards of Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies had worked without stopping, building a fleet designed for one purpose only: war. Commander Boraseo stood on the bridge of the battleship Retribution as it emerged from hyperspace at the very edge of Vorthan territory. She was 38 years old and had once been a peaceful exploration captain, mapping new star systems and making first contact with alien species. Now she commanded the deadliest warship humanity had ever built. The bridge was dark except for the soft glow of tactical displays. Around her, 50 other human ships materialized from hyperspace in perfect formation. These were not the sleek, beautiful vessels that had once carried human diplomats and scientists to distant worlds. These ships were angular, brutal things covered in weapons and armor. They looked like what they were, instruments of vengeance. Report, Commander Seo said quietly. Lieutenant Kyung-ho Na looked up from his sensor station. He was young, barely 25, but his eyes held the cold determination that every human now carried. Target confirmed, Commander. Vorthan 7 Industrial World, bearing 27 Mark IV. Intelligence reports show this is where they process the children. Commander Seo felt her jaw tighten. Intelligence had been very specific about what happened on Vorthan 7. It was a factory world where the aliens took captured human children and surgically connected them to their computer networks. The kids were kept alive but unconscious, their young minds forced to serve as biological processors for Vorthan technology. Stealth systems online, reported Chief Engineer Park Minute J from his station. New cloaking technology is working perfectly. The Vorthans will not detect us until we are already inside their defensive perimeter. The human fleet moved forward like ghosts in space. The stealth technology was something new, created by combining captured Vorthan equipment with human engineering. Earth scientists had reverse-engineered every piece of alien technology they could find, then improved it with desperate creativity and unlimited resources. The result was ships that could become completely invisible to Vorthan sensors. Commander Seo watched her tactical display as they approached the industrial world. Vorthan 7 was an ugly planet, its surface covered with massive factory complexes and processing centers. Orbital platforms surrounded it like a metal ring, each one bristling with defensive weapons. There, she said, pointing at a specific complex on the planet's northern continent. That is where our children are being held. Lieutenant Na enhanced the image. The processing facility was enormous, covering several square kilometers. Intelligence reports suggested it held over 300 human children in its bioneural integration chambers. Weapons systems are charged and ready, reported Tactical Officer Lee Ji-woo. All ships are in position. Commander Seo took a deep breath. In a few minutes, the shooting would start. But this would not be like the old wars where humans tried to minimize casualties and follow rules of engagement. This was different. This was personal. Target the facility's shield generators first, she ordered. Remember, every second we delay is another moment our children suffer in those chambers. The attack began without warning. 50 human warships appeared out of nowhere around Vorthan 7, their weapons already firing. The planet's defensive systems tried to respond, but they had been designed to fight enemies they could see. Vorthan defense platforms exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Shield generators were destroyed before they could power up. Communications arrays were vaporized before they could send warnings. Within 10 minutes, the planet's defenses were gone. Human drop ships launched from the fleet, carrying Marines toward the processing facility. These soldiers were volunteers, many of them parents who had lost children in other raids. They wore new combat armor painted black with one symbol on the chest, a small handprint, representing every stolen child they were here to save. The Vorthan defenders on the ground were completely unprepared. They had been fighting other alien species for centuries, enemies that followed galactic warfare conventions. They expected formal challenges, negotiation attempts, warnings before attacks. Humans provided none of these things. The Marines stormed into the facility like a force of nature. Vorthan soldiers tried to set up defensive positions, but the humans moved through their lines like they were not even there. Advanced weapons that had been developed specifically to kill Vorthans cut through alien armor as if it were paper. Sergeant Kim Dae-ho led his squad through the facility's central corridor. He was a father of 2 and had volunteered for this mission the day after the vote. His squad moved with practiced efficiency, clearing room after room. Then they found the processing chambers. The sight that greeted them would haunt every human soldier for the rest of their lives. Rows and rows of small beds, each one holding a human child between the ages of 5 and 15. The kids were unconscious, kept alive by machines while thick cables ran from their heads into massive computer systems. Their young minds were being used as biological processors, their thoughts enslaved to power Vorthan technology. Something fundamental broke inside every human who saw this. The Marines had been professional soldiers following military orders. Now they became something else entirely. They became hunters. When Sergeant Kim's squad encountered the next group of Vorthan technicians, they did not take prisoners. When Lieutenant Colonel Choi Mi-young found the facility's command center, she did not accept surrender offers. By the time the last Vorthan defender was eliminated, 127 human children had been rescued from the processing chambers. Medical teams worked frantically to remove the neural cables and begin treatment. But something else had been taken from that facility. Vorthan communication logs, prisoner records, and facility locations throughout their empire. Commander Seo stood in the ruins of the processing facility, holding a tablet that contained the locations of 47 other sites where human children were being held. Send a message to Earth Command, she told her communications officer. Tell them we have the first children, and we have targets for the next phase. Word was already spreading through Vorthan space. Their defensive installations were sending panicked reports about human ships that appeared from nowhere, human soldiers who fought without mercy, and human commanders who were not interested in negotiation. The message was simple and terrifying. The humans were coming, and they would not stop until every stolen child was free. Overlord Vexthan stood in the command center of the Vorthan High Command, his 4 arms crossed as he stared at the massive tactical display that dominated the room. The screen showed a map of the Vorthan Empire, but what he saw there made his scaled skin turn a sickly pale green color. Red marks covered nearly a third of their territory. Each red mark represented a facility, a fleet, or an entire star system that had simply vanished. Not destroyed in the traditional sense, but completely erased as if it had never existed at all. Intelligence Officer Kethvar approached with slow, fearful steps. He carried a data tablet that contained the latest reports from their border territories. His normally confident posture was gone, replaced by the hunched shoulders of a being who had seen too much death. My lord, Kethvar said, his voice barely above a whisper, the latest casualty reports from the human attacks. Vexthan turned his large, reptilian eyes toward his subordinate. How many fleets have we lost in total? 43 battle groups, my lord. Complete losses. No survivors reported from any engagement. The Overlord felt something cold settle in his stomach. 43 battle groups represented over 200,000 Vorthan soldiers and crew members. It was the largest military disaster in their empire's 1,000-year history. But that is not the most concerning part of the reports, Kethvar continued, his voice shaking slightly. Vexthan's head snapped up. What could possibly be worse than losing 43 entire fleets? We have found no survivors from any human attack. Not one prisoner of war. Not one escape pod. Not one distress beacon from a crew member who managed to get away. Kethvar paused and looked directly at his commander. My lord, the humans are not taking prisoners. They are not accepting surrender offers. They are hunting us like animals. The command center fell silent except for the soft humming of the computers. Other Vorthan officers who had been working at their stations stopped what they were doing and looked toward their leaders. Fear was spreading through the room like a disease. On the outer edge of Vorthan territory, civilian transports were fleeing toward the Empire's core worlds. These refugees brought stories that were spreading panic throughout Vorthan space. The tales were all similar and all terrifying. Human warships that appeared from empty space without any warning. Human soldiers who moved through Vorthan defensive positions like unstoppable killing machines. Human commanders who looked at surrendering Vorthan troops and simply continued shooting. Most disturbing of all were reports that the humans seemed to enjoy what they were doing. Vorthan survivors spoke of human faces that showed satisfaction when they killed, as if each death brought them personal pleasure. Captain J1 Quan sat in his command chair aboard the stealth destroyer Silent Fury listening to intercepted Vorthan communications through his headset. His ship had been tracking a Vorthan transport vessel for 6 hours, staying invisible while following it through hyperspace. The transport was trying to reach a safe harbor deep in Vorthan territory, but Captain Quan had other plans. "Sir," said Lieutenant Yi Jin-on from her communication station, "I have been monitoring Vorthan emergency frequencies. They have given us a new name." "Oh?" Captain Quan replied without taking his eyes off his tactical display. "They are calling us the Flesh Demons. According to their transmissions, they believe we fight without honor and show no mercy to fallen enemies." Captain Quan allowed himself a cold smile. "Good. Fear will make them sloppy and careless. Frightened enemies make mistakes." His tactical officer, Ensign Park Sang-minute, looked up from his sensor readings. "Captain, the transport is preparing to drop out of hyperspace. Intelligence suggests it is carrying captured human children to a processing facility in the Vorthan core systems." "Intercept course," Captain Quan ordered. "Prepare to engage the moment we drop to normal space." The Silent Fury materialized directly in front of the fleeing Vorthan transport, appearing as if from nowhere. The alien ship immediately began evasive maneuvers, but it was too late. Human weapons were already locked onto their target. "Open communications," Captain Quan commanded. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the Vorthan transport. The alien captain was a typical Vorthan with green-scaled skin and 4 muscular arms. His large eyes showed fear and confusion. "This is Captain Quan of the Earth Defense Coalition," the human commander said in a calm, steady voice. "Our sensors indicate you are carrying stolen human children. Return them immediately or your ship will be destroyed." The Vorthan captain's fear quickly turned to anger. "You cannot threaten us. We are protected under galactic warfare laws. The Galactic Council will." His sentence was cut short as the transport exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Captain Quan had not waited for the alien to finish speaking before ordering the attack. "Scan the debris field for life pods," he told his crew. "The children might still be alive in emergency stasis chambers." The search took 20 minutes. They found 12 escape pods containing human children, all unconscious but alive. The kids ranged in age from 7 to 14, and each one showed signs of neural interface surgery where the Vorthans had begun connecting them to their computer systems. "Any Vorthan survivors detected?" Captain Quan asked his tactical officer. "No, sir. No Vorthan life signs in any of the recovered pods." Captain Quan nodded. "Good. Transfer the children to our medical bay and prepare them for transport back to Earth." He did not order a search for Vorthan survivors because he knew there would not be any. Human ships had been designed to ensure complete destruction of enemy vessels. The rescue of human children was the primary mission, but the elimination of every Vorthan involved in their capture was an equally important secondary goal. As the Silent Fury prepared to jump back to friendly space with the rescued children, Captain Quan received an updated intelligence briefing. 4 to 9 more Vorthan facilities had been identified as holding human captives. The hunt would continue. Across Vorthan space, the message was spreading through civilian and military channels alike. The humans were coming, and they showed no interest in negotiation, surrender, or mercy. They appeared without warning, struck without hesitation, and left no survivors behind. The mighty Vorthan Empire, which had conquered dozens of species across the galaxy, was learning what it meant to be prey. The sun was rising over Vorth Prime when the largest human fleet in history dropped out of hyperspace above the Vorthan Empire's capital world. Admiral Sujin Moon stood on the bridge of the massive battleship Earth's Vengeance watching as over 2,000 human warships took their positions around the planet. She was 52 years old and had been fighting this war for 8 months. In that time, She had seen things that would haunt her forever. Processing facilities where human children were kept like livestock. Computer centers where young minds were forced to serve as biological processors. Medical labs where alien scientists studied the best ways to connect human brains to their machines. Now it would all end. Fleet status report, she commanded. Captain Do-hyun Park looked up from his tactical station. He had been with Admiral Moon since the beginning of the war and had watched her transform from a peaceful exploration commander into something harder and more dangerous. All ships are in position, Admiral. Every available vessel from Earth, Mars, the outer colonies, and our forward bases. 2,147 warships ready for combat. Admiral Moon nodded and looked at the tactical display showing Vorth Prime below them. The planet was covered in massive cities and industrial complexes. Orbital defense platforms surrounded it like a metal ring, each one bristling with enough weapons to destroy a small fleet. The remaining Vorthan navy, nearly 800 ships, was positioned between the human fleet and their homeworld. The Vorthans had pulled back everything they had left to defend their capital. Every surviving ship, every weapon, every soldier was here for this final battle. It would not be enough. "Sir," said Communications Officer Lieutenant Noon-ji, "we are receiving a transmission from the planetary surface. It appears to be from the Vorthan High Command." "Put it on the main screen," Admiral Moon ordered. The display flickered to life, showing Overlord Vextan standing in what appeared to be an ornate command center. He wore ceremonial armor covered in gold decorations, trying to project power and authority. But Admiral Moon could see the fear in his large reptilian eyes. "Humans," the alien leader began, "we are prepared to begin negotiations. Surely we can reach some form of accommodation that benefits both our species." "There will be no negotiations," Admiral Moon interrupted. Her voice was calm but carried the weight of humanity's combined rage. "The only accommodation possible is the immediate return of every human child in your custody, followed by the complete surrender of everyone involved in your harvesting program." Overlord Vextan's four arms gestured frantically. "That is impossible. Our entire technological infrastructure depends on the neural networks we have developed. Without them, our civilization will collapse." Admiral Moon stared directly into the camera, her face showing no emotion at all. "Then your technological infrastructure dies today." She cut the transmission and turned to her weapons officer. "All ships, open fire." The human fleet attacked as one unified force. 2,000 warships unleashed everything they had at the same moment. The space around Vorth Prime lit up like a small sun as energy weapons, missiles, and kinetic projectiles filled the void between the fleets. The Vorthan orbital defense platforms returned fire, their massive cannons sending streams of deadly energy toward the human ships. For a few minutes, it seemed like the battle might be evenly matched. Then the human ships activated their secret weapon. New shield technology, developed specifically for this battle, absorbed the Vorthan energy weapons and redirected the power to the human ship's own guns. The more the Vorthans shot at them, the stronger the human weapons became. Within an hour, the orbital defenses were gone. Within 3 hours, half the Vorthan fleet was destroyed. By the 6th hour of battle, Vorthan ships were trying to flee the system entirely. The humans hunted them down and destroyed them all. The battle for space was over, but the real work was just beginning. Human landing craft launched from the fleet, carrying Marines toward the planet's surface. Their mission was not conquest or occupation. They had come for one purpose only, to find and rescue every human child on the planet. Admiral Moon watched from orbit as her forces stormed through Vorthan cities. The aliens tried to organize defensive positions, but their military had been designed to fight other aliens who followed galactic warfare rules. Humans had abandoned those rules 8 months ago. The fighting lasted for 18 hours. When it was over, the mighty Vorthan Empire was nothing but burning ruins. Their fleets were debris floating in space. Their cities were destroyed. Their leaders were dead. But in the deepest underground bunkers beneath the capital city, human rescue teams made the discovery they had been hoping for. Hidden behind layers of security and defensive systems, they found the main processing center where the Vorthans kept their most valuable prizes. Over 3,000 human children were there, ranging in age from 4 to 16. They were kept unconscious in special medical chambers while thick cables ran from their heads to massive computer systems. Some had been connected to the machines for so long that removing them safely would take months of careful medical work. Dr. Hyjin Park, who had been part of this war since the very beginning, knelt beside a small girl who could not have been older than 8 years old. The child's blonde hair was tangled and dirty, and surgical scars on her scalp showed where the Vorthans had installed neural interfaces. It's okay, sweetheart, Dr. Park whispered as she carefully began removing the invasive cables from the girl's head. You're safe now. You're going home. The little girl's eyes fluttered open for the first time in months. She looked around the medical chamber with confusion and fear, not understanding where she was or what had happened to her. Are the monsters gone? She asked in a voice so quiet it was barely audible. Dr. Park looked through the chamber's viewport at the burning Vorthan city beyond. Smoke rose from hundreds of destroyed buildings. The proud capital of a galactic empire had been reduced to rubble by humanity's vengeance. Yes, little one, she said softly. The monsters are gone. They will never hurt you or any other child ever again. The girl closed her eyes and went back to sleep, finally safe for the first time in months. Around her, human medical teams worked to free thousands of other children from their neural prisons. The war was over. Humanity's children were coming home.